Hi, I'm Jim Brown. I'm the Business Unit Manager for Medical and Industrial Markets here at CPC, and we're going to go over a simple three-step process to help you select the right fluid connector. We're going to talk about how to select the right fluid connector and avoid finding out late in your process that the connector you specified isn't meeting your needs. We've talked to a lot of customers over the years who are late in the game, and they tell us they don't have enough flow or there's a puddle in front of their machine. And so let's look at some simple steps to make sure you can avoid that. We do this by working with our customers every single day to ensure that the primary user interface, that connector in their hand, is an integral part of your equipment design. And to help with this, we have a simple three-step strategy for selecting fluid connections to help you make sure your connector meets your design needs and meets your customers' expectations. Our first step involves looking at some of the general requirements to ensure that we consider basic patient safety. First, we want to make sure that we look at it from a general sense. We want to meet the needs of both non-technical patients and skilled healthcare professionals. And this really relates to usability, as we see a trend to more home healthcare applications where non-technical or non-trained people are administering care. It's very important that the connector is obvious and easy to use to make sure that the care is administered properly. We also have to make sure that we eliminate the dangers of leaks or spills. Now, a leaky connector can be a nuisance. For example, on a cold therapy device, you fall asleep and you have a leaky connector and you wake up in a puddle of cold ice water because the compression therapy device has a leaky connector. But on the other hand, it can actually be a danger or a hazard. Now, imagine a leaky connector spilling water or some sort of slippery fluid on the floor, creating a slip or a fall hazard where someone could actually be harmed or hurt. So the leak-free performance is key to making sure we have a safe connection. Now, not only do we want to make sure it's easy to make the right connection, we want to make sure we prevent misconnections. And that really brings us to the last part of this first step, is making sure that we have connectors that connect to what they're supposed to connect to and do not connect to things they are not supposed to connect to. And one thing that we do is we recommend our customers consult the new ISO 80369 series of standards for medical connectors. Now, these connectors, being released throughout 2016 and into 2017, define a series of non-interchangeable connectors for a range of defined medical equipment or devices. So for example, you might have access into the vascular system. That would be ISO 80369-7. Or we might be talking about 80369-5, which defines the connectors for blood pressure cuffs. And you can see as an example in the photo on the left, our bayonet insert, which meets the ISO 80369-5 standard for blood pressure cuffs, and then the bayonet body, which mates to it, which has an easy-to-use push-button latch. Each of these are used in conjunction to make it very easy to connect and disconnect the blood pressure cuff at the patient. So after considering the general requirements, particularly as they relate to safety, now we get into narrowing down the many different connection options that are available, and we do this by looking at the application's functional needs. We start our discussion with customers here at CPC by asking about the application they're designing for. This drives not only the tubing selection by the the tubing selection, but the connector as well. And we might be talking about an IVD or lab application, as you can see there on the left photo. This is typically, we're going to be working with customers who use microbore tubing, probably using some solvents as the reagent. And so we've got valves that are extremely important. Ease of use is very important, and chemical compatibility. But we contrast that with, say, surgical applications where we may be having applications that require higher flow. And in this case, now customers are very much concerned about biocompatibility, or how the plastics or metals in the connection would impact the media, for example, blood or other body fluids. Patient monitoring is another application where we're talking about low pressure air, probably not using a valve, but ease of use, small size is much more important. So these are all just examples of applications where when we start understanding that, it starts to drive the connector needs. So let's start to narrow down the process, narrow down the choices that we have by looking at requirements. And probably the best place to start is the flow requirements. A lot of times what we'll say is, what type of tubing are you using? What's the inner diameter? When you start with the tubing, that defines a basic flow requirement to narrow down the connector platforms. Then we want to evaluate based on pressure drop. Now, pressure is the power within your system, and every connector, every filter, every bend or step in your system is going to create a drop in that pressure. So we want to look at flow, and then we want to look at the pressure drop you have in the connector. CPC connectors are designed with high flow valves to minimize that pressure drop. So start with your tubing to get a basic flow size, and then start to evaluate which connector platforms or options meet those needs. And you can see an example of a pressure drop versus flow graph that CPC publishes for all of its connectors. Next, take a look at the temperature and pressure within your application. First of all, you want to look at the temperature ranges in use, but don't forget about the storage and shipping temperatures. Will it sit in a truck in northern Minnesota in the winter, or on a hot summer day in Arizona in the summer? The temperature can have an impact on pressure rating, particularly in plastic couplings, and you can see there another example of a rating graph that we publish to help you in that choice. Now, those are the two basic things that we want to start with, and then next we're going to talk about the impact of media. So far in our process, we've looked at general safety requirements, then we've looked at pressure and temperature requirements and flow to narrow down to maybe basic sizes of connectors. And now we really need to start to look at media. When we talk about media, it's the chemicals that are going to be flowing through your tubing and thus through the connector. And we got to consider some other things though as well. We need to consider cleaning solutions. Is someone going to be cleaning this with an IPA wipe on a regular basis, or are there other aggressive chemicals or cleaning solutions? There might be environmental exposure, whether that's ozone or ultraviolet light, if it's going to be in the sun. The other thing that you need to make sure you're aware of is potential additives. It's very common at CPC for someone to contact us and say, we're using this media and it should work, but we're having chemical compatibility issues. When we dig in with them, we start to investigate and analyze the fluid, there might be something in there to prevent freezing, or to prevent mold or mildew, or some sort of fungicide inside this media that they weren't aware of, and it's actually those additives that can create a chemical compatibility issue. And certainly whenever you're looking at chemical compatibility, you want to look at the impact of temperature, because sometimes that can accelerate issues relative to chemical breakdown or degradation with a plastic. In addition to how it may be cleaned or how the product may hold up to the media, the fluids, you also want to look at sterilization. Sometimes people will sterilize or sanitize with different chemicals, or it might be irradiated, say for example with gamma or E-beam sterilization. The photo in this slide is an example of CPC's MPC connector. It's a polycarbonate connector typically used in biopharmaceutical production or research and used in quite a few surgical applications as well. When we use this, we're worried with customers. We talk about things like how it will hand up to cleaning, how it will hold up to sterilization, or what impact would the plastic have on the media, say for example body fluids going through the connector. And so now we start to talk about requirements like ISO 10993, and CPC can provide test data that we've done by independent labs to talk about and give customers confidence in terms of the biocompatibility of the material. The next step in our second step of our three-step process is to look at the connector quality itself. And here we want to look at surface finish on key critical functional areas, things like the injection molding gate. And the gate is where the plastic is injected into the mold cavity. This should be small so it doesn't catch on a glove. It should be strategically placed so it's not on a critical sealing surface, for example. And to help provide confidence in terms of the connector quality, you want to work with a manufacturer that can give you test data to support things such as leak-free performance. And CPC provides lots of data, does lots of different testing to ensure that our connectors are leak-free, whether it's with liquid, whether it's with a gas, whether it's under pressure or vacuum. Now when we look at the quality of the product, we also want to consider that quality over the life of the product. Is the product rated for the number of cycles that you'll need the connector in your particular application? And again, test data from the manufacturer can help in your validation or verification process. And when you look at the connector and its ratings, you always want to factor in a safety factor. You want to make sure that there's a little margin of error in terms of what the product can do and where you will use it in your application. The connector that you see here is a newer product for CPC. It's called the DTLD. And what's unique about this product, made primarily from ABS, is that it allows independent connection of the two inserts that you see, but by pushing the push button latch in the body just once, both of the inserts are disconnected from the body automatically. So it's a very unique feature in terms of this, used quite often in cooling loop applications such as orthopedic cold therapy. Next, if you have a connector, you need to take that connector and somehow get it attached to tubing. And the most common way, and we'll focus simply on hose barbs today, although there are a variety of different ways that connectors are attached to the end of the tubing. We'll talk about hose barbs though. Single hose barbs work well with softer tubing. Multiple sharp barbs provide a secure connection over a wide range of tubing. Now some manufacturers will make the claim that a single hose barb is always better. And that may be true if they're comparing that to a poorly made triple barb design, which an example of a triple barb design is in the lower photo there on the left. However, you can make poor single barbs and you can make poor triple barbs, and an example of a poor single barb is at the top. CPC does some very unique things in the tooling that we use to manufacture our parts to make triple barbs that are the best in the industry. All three barbs are very sharp, no parting line on the first surface to create sealing, and actually parting lines throughout the rest of the surfaces on the part are virtually impossible to see. We take great pains to make sure that we provide a hose barb that grips the tubing very well and is leak-free every time. You want to be aware of poorly molded hose barbs because that can be a failure point. And you also want to make sure that the size and design is tailored for your tubing. You know, if you just make the OD large enough, you're going to stretch the tubing and increase the pull-off force. However, doing that, the trade-off is higher assembly force. And so you need to think about balancing pull-off force with assembly force, because you don't want your assembly line people dealing with carpal tunnel or slow rates in terms of installing the tubing. So balancing OD and then the sharpness of the barbs is really what is going to dictate a successful barb design and successful performance in your application. Now CPC makes connectors with and without valves, and integral valves prevent spills when you disconnect. It also, if you use a non-spill style valve, can also help prevent air from entering the system when you disconnect. CPC makes a variety of different valve sizes, and we work with customers all the time to pick the right valve for their application. Now, if you're in low pressure air or particularly in gases, we see a lot of customers using non-valved connectors. It provides a lower cost option. It's a simpler part because we're removing features, we're removing the valve from the inside. So valved or non-valved or whatever style, CPC can work with you to select the right valve option for your application. And what you see here on the left is CPC's NS4 product. It is a non-spill valve made out of polypropylene, so it has good chemical resistance, the easy push button latch, and this product's been in the market for many, many years in lots of different applications. A very robust product with an easy to use push button latch. Now, sometimes you have the connectors just connecting two pieces of tubing together, but other times you want to connect that piece of tubing to the face of a panel or a piece of equipment. And this is where we start to mount the connector. Now, we might use a panel mount is a term we'll use, and that means we have a hole in the panel and we'll connect it by snapping it in, by using a panel nut or a C-ring. There's a variety of different ways that we can mount the connector on the piece of equipment. The other typical way to mount is with a thread, and it might be a pipe thread in a manifold or a tank or at the end of a pipe. And in this case, a lot of times we'll get into the discussion of metal versus plastic. You know, metal is going to provide higher strength and also a higher end appearance, particularly if the equipment or application uses metal and stainless steel. But plastic provides a robust, cost-effective solution, and it gives us additional design flexibility. And so a lot of times we'll move to plastic to make a more cost-effective way to mount to the panel, to make it fit in with the overall look of the design, or provide some additional features that we just can't do cost effectively in metal. So that's step 2, taking a look at some of the functional requirements and balancing that with the functional capabilities of different types of connectors. At this point, you might think you're done. You might think that we've got the connector that we need, but we want to go through a third step, and that's considering some advanced connection functions, some things that you can do with connectors that don't immediately come to mind. And CPC offers a couple different things. The first thing is enabling a connector with RFID, or radio frequency identification. And this allows the flow of fluid and the exchange of data at the point of connection. And so what does this mean? Well, this means on the right-hand side of this picture we have a reader, and on the left half of this connection we have a tag. And the reader reads information that we have already put on the tag. It could be a lot number, it could be an expiration date. We can write to the tag and we can keep track of every time it's connected. This allows you to protect your equipment from someone connecting the wrong connector. It can protect your brand, preventing someone from using, say for example, a pirated fluid or an off-brand or a competitor's product. It can also automate processes. We have a customer who uses this. They have a device that does different surgeries, and the RFID tag on the tubing at the end of the disposable tube set has information. When it's plugged in, the machine reads that information and it automatically configures itself for the type of surgery that disposable tube set is intended for. We also can prevent misconnections again, and so we can, if you plug it in wrong, we can make sure that the piece of equipment doesn't turn on and do the surgery wrong. In essence, saving lives. Another advanced capability we can do is to combine fluid and electrical connections. And so now we call this the hybrid quick disconnect. It combines the transfer of power, fluid, signals into a single connection point. It eliminates multiple connections, and it can simplify the user's interface between a remote tool and a device, speeding and making it more safe to change out modular tools. So there you have it, a 3-step strategy for selecting the right fluid connector. And we hope that this simple process helps you eliminate finding out late in your design process that the connector you may have not spend a lot of time thinking about or selected early in your process, it helps you avoid finding out that that is not meeting the needs of your design requirements and your end customer. And so this solid strategy ensures that the connector, that key user interface, is an integral part of the equipment design. The right connector can enhance your customer's perception of your device. Thank you. There you have it. A quick 3-step process to show you how CPC can help you select the right fluid connector for your application. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at cpcworldwide.com or at the phone number listed there. Thank you.